Continuing with the review for Unit 3, Math 1, look at number 10 says graph, and I'm going to graph this by using slope-intercept form. I'm going to graph it by using mx plus b. So b is where I start. That's my y-intercept, so it's a positive 3. My slope, if I see a negative, I go ahead and just put it in the top one. It tells me to go down 3 spaces and over 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. All right? And there is my 2 points that I need to create a line. And then there is my graph. Number 11 says, find the slope of the line that passes through those points. Graph the line and name each point on the line. So I'm just going to plot them. Negative 5, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3. Negative 3, 2. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2. Okay. Then I'll graph the line. I'm going to label these. Negative 5, negative 3. Negative 3, 2. Okay. So I labeled the points. Now I want to find the slope, and I could use my slope formula. What I have here is I'm going to just draw in my right triangle. So it's a positive slope, so it goes up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spaces, goes over 2 spaces. So my slope is, I can think of it as rise over run, and the slope is 5 over 2. Number 12, write an equation that passes through the point negative 8, 20, and is perpendicular, okay, to this equation y equals 4x plus 3, and make sure your answer is in slope-intercept form. So I'm going to actually use point slope form and then turn it into it. So here's the big thing, perpendicular slopes. So the slope for this line is m equals 4 over 1, right? I got that from right there, 4 over 1. Perpendicular slopes, they want it to be perpendicular to this one, and that means you use the reciprocal, you flip it upside down, and change the sign. So the slope that I'm going to use for this equation is negative 1 over 4, because that would be perpendicular. See, it's upside down, the reciprocal, and negative. So now I'll plug it into y-intercept, or point slope first, and then I'll turn it into slope-intercept form. So I'm going to say y minus 20 equals negative 1/4 x minus negative 8. Okay, so that's just going to turn out to be adding the opposite, right? So negative 20, I'm going to distribute this negative 1/4, and it's actually not going to be that bad, right? Because I just multiply the tops. Careful with the negative signs. So this is minus 2, and then I'm going to add a 20. Alright, so my final answer is y equals negative 1/4 x plus 18. Number 13, they want me to graph using the slope-intercept form, so that means I have to solve for y. So I'm going to subtract 3x to both sides. I get negative y, negative 9xy equals negative 3x plus 18. Divide everything by negative 9. Be careful with your negative signs again. So this is y equals 1 over 3 positive minus 2. So I start at negative 2 for my slope, my y-intercept. I go up 1 and over 3 spaces. And there is my line. Number 14 says graph using intercepts. This one I make the other one 0. So I'm going to start by finding my x-intercept, and that's what I make the y 0. So I say 2x plus 4 times 0 equals 12. Divided by 2, and x equals 6. So that's where I cross the x-axis at 6. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. There's 1 point. Then I'll find the y-intercept. That's when I make the x 0. Alright, so I get y equals 3. Positive 3, sorry. 1, 2, and 3. Okay. And once I have my 2 points, that's all I need for a line. Okay. Number 15. Write an equation in point slope form. Okay, so I'm going to use y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. So I'm going to say y minus negative 1 equals the slope times x minus x1. All right, 2. Should probably simplify that and add the opposite. Oops, sorry. And it's point slope, so I don't need to solve for y. I'll stop right there. Number 16, I want to graph. Okay, so you got to remember that the average, or what we call a parent function for absolute value, is this. Right? It's centered right here at the origin, but if I do a +1 outside, that shifts me up one space. Okay, shifts me up one space. Now, if I add 1 inside, it's always kind of weird, but it's actually going to move me one place to the left. I know it's a +1, but when it's inside the absolute values, the signs are backwards, so I'm going to move this way because it's inside, and I go to the left 1. Number 18 says the height in inches of a tree is given by h equals 2m plus 7, where m equals the number of months. What is the y-intercept and what does it represent? So I basically have a tree growing, okay? And they want to know, what does the y-intercept mean? So if I want to find the y-intercept and make the x0, well, I don't have x's and y's here, but I do have inputs and outputs, right? So this is like my x and this is like my y. So if I want to find the y-intercept, I make the x0. So I'm going to say h equals 2 times 0 plus 7, and h equals 7. So that's my y-intercept right there. Let's just say 7. Okay. So I'm charting the height of a tree. Well, what does that mean? So that's when I'm at 0, when I have 0 months. I plugged in a 0 for x, that means 0 months. So that's the starting height. Okay. It's the starting height of the tree when we started to measure it. Okay, we started it when we started calculating or seeing how tall this tree was and how it's growing. It was originally, 7, I'm assuming, inches when we started doing this.